Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs. Hey, y'all. Welcome to this week's show. This week, we're going to get into a really fascinating family of herbs. And the thing is, it's a big one, but don't worry, I'm not going to overwhelm you. We're going to take this one just a bite at a time. You remember last week, I said that the easiest plants to start out identifying were the buttercups that we discussed. Usually, you should know those because they can be poisonous, okay? Also in that category would be what you might call the parsley family, the umbelliferous plants. There's some very poisonous members of that, look just like a wild carrot. Okay, we can talk about that later, but today we're going to talk about one of the main families in which we find a lot of our medicinal herbs. And the nice thing about this is they're very easy to identify once you know what you're looking for. And because they are so common, because there are so many varieties, chances are if you walk out in your backyard today, you're going to be able to spot one. So this is kind of fun. This is really where most people find their entry point into foraging and wildcrafting. I think I probably did. I think it's been just the mint family. I'll go ahead and tell you. I won't hold you in suspense anymore. The mint family. Um, like I said, so numerous. And I very well remember being pretty young and picking wild mint and eating it. So I guess my mother told me how to identify mint. And later, when I studied herbs, I learned about so many members of the family. In the mountains where I live, the most common ones that we find in the wild are peppermint, spearmint, and apple mint. If you look in any seed catalog, you will see dozens of just mints. The mint family contains so many herbs that are not mints, actually. They're just in the mint family, which is the Lamiaceae family. Let's talk about first how to identify a mint. Well, first of all, they have square stems. Secondly, they have a very unique flower. Let me just go ahead and read to you from Botany in a Day how Thomas J. Elpel says you can identify the mint family. He says, if you pick a plant with a distinctly square stalk and simple opposite leaves, it is almost certainly a member of the mint family. Now, opposite leaves mean on that square stalk, the leaves will be in pairs, one on either side of the stalk, directly opposite each other. The flowers of this family are bisexual and irregular. The calyx, or sepal, is five-toothed and often two-lipped. Now, if you've ever looked at a mint flower, you know what he means. Now, obviously, you can't figure out a whole lot of that just hearing those words spoken, but mints usually have fairly small flowers, and they're kind of tubular, a little bit, and a unique shape. So pull up a picture of a flowering mint on the internet if you're listening to this podcast right now, or as soon as you get a chance, and you will see it. Now, the most next most important identifying part of that flower, there are four stamens with one pair longer than the other. So you're just going to see four stamens. If it has more than four stamens, if it has fewer than four stamens, not a mint. And two of them are longer than the other. So now you can see how easy this is to identify because you got a square stalk, a unique looking kind of tubular flower. The flower has two lips, usually with two lobes to the upper lip and three lobes to the lower lip. Now you would have to probably get a magnifying glass out to make sure that flower actually fits that description. But if you do, and you can see those stamens, there'll be four of them, and two of them will be longer than the other. It consists of two united carpels, it's bicarpellate in other words, and matures as a capsule containing four nutlets. Just getting into deep water here we don't really need to go into, but basically that's what you need to know about a mint. The other thing is they have volatile oils. The entire family usually has a fairly strong pungent smell. That makes these chief among our kitchen herbs, our culinary herbs. So many of them are in the mint family, and you'll be surprised. Well, it includes worldwide, there are about 180 genera representing some 3,500 species. So mints are really only second to, well, composites and your mustard family, the brassicas, and having just incredible numbers. Well, there are a lot of legumes too. But that's why I say if you go outside and look, you're probably going to find a mint. If you crush it and it smells like mint or like another very strong herb and volatile oils, it's probably a mint. Fortunately, I guess, if you want to kind of narrow it down, there are only about 50 of the mints that are found in North America that grow wild. Now, there are plenty of them that have escaped from gardens. Like I said, the culinary herbs that are in the mint family are, of course, mint. I mean, peppermint, spearmint. But rosemary is a mint. Lavender is in the mint family. Marjoram, germander, thyme, savory, horehound, and true sage, not sagebrush, but real sage, salvia, and even basil is in the mint family. And an ornamental houseplant called Coleus is also a mint. You've probably seen this one. It usually has wildly colored leaves. But if you look closely at it, yep, it's a mint. It's actually sort of a subcategory of sage, which is one of the branches of the mint family. Medicinally, this family is rich in volatile oils, especially menthol. These spicy oils are stimulating and warming, causing the body to open up and sweat, and thus most of the plants are diaphoretic. That means it helps break the fever. I've mentioned before, but it always bears repeating. A fever is part of the body's immune response. You're the host at that point for a virus or a bacteria, some kind of germ, and the fever makes your body inhospitable to that germ. It cooks it, it kills it. All right, so in modern times, we're taught to avoid a fever. Boy, you get a fever, run grab some aspirin. A lot of times, that's not the best thing to do. You actually want to increase sweating, maybe increase the body temperature a little bit to help resolve that fever so it passes quickly. Now, high fevers can be very dangerous in small children. I mean, if a baby starts spiking a fever, that can be deadly. I mean, don't take chances with that. That's also true of the very elderly or people who are very sick or weak. Anyone who's in a weakened state needs to be careful with fevers, but strong, healthy people often use a fever to help their immune system combat whatever germ is invading. So these diaphoretics they help you do that. Externally, you might take a hot bath, put some ginger in it, and then wrap up in a blanket and get to bed. Your fever is going to go up, you're going to sweat, and it's going to break the fever, and you're going to feel so much better and absolutely exhausted, and you're just going to sweat out all kinds of toxins. Everybody knows what a fever breaking feels like. But when we get used to taking aspirin and other NSAIDs, Tylenol, and all that to avoid a fever, we're weakening our body's natural response, and we don't get used to that feeling so much anymore. So these herbs, taken internally, the mints and several others, help the body do its natural process and can be very effective in a cold or a virus. Cold or flu, we'll go with that, cold or flu. Let's see. Oh, Elpel says warming the body also opens up the blood vessels, allowing the blood to flow more freely. Thus, mints have a vasodilator effect, useful for relaxing blood vessels in case of hypertension or for stimulating delayed menstruation, called often called an emmenagogue. That's what that word means, stimulating menstruation. Most members of this family are astringent, but a few are bitter, and that is true. There are a few that are very bitter, resulting in different uses between them. Astringent mints are often recommended as menstrual regulators, apparently because the volatile oils stimulate menstruation, while the astringents suppress it. That's a balancing effect, in theory. Bitter mints, such as pennyroyal, horehound, certain members of the what we would call mints, the mentha category, coyote mint, which is a monarda, tend to have a more pronounced vasodilating effect. Some of these herbs may be dangerous during pregnancy due to their anthelmintic, that's worm killing, and menstrual stimulating properties. The most dangerous ones are also bitter ones. So that is important to keep in mind. I usually say you probably don't want to take any herbs when you're pregnant unless you absolutely know they're safe. And even the safe ones, like say raspberry leaf, you don't want to take in too much of an amount. I mean, too much raspberry leaf, too much of anything is a bad thing. Too much of anything is a bad thing. But those some of those mint family members, especially well known, is pennyroyal. Can cause a miscarriage, and you just want to be very careful about that. Now, you might not think, all right, I'm used to cooking with rosemary and basil and all that. Yeah, but you're putting a little bit in food, and you're cooking a lot of those volatile oils out. They're going to evaporate as you cook. When you're talking a strong tincture or just say eating a whole salad of fresh picked herb leaves, that's a huge, huge amount going into your system of a medicinal plant. And at that point, it's not going to act the same way as it did when you just sprinkled a little into your marinara sauce. So let's get into some of these. Oh, here's one I did a class on, one of my video classes recently. Bugleweed. Bugleweed, or commonly called bugle, is a very important medicinal herb. Culpepper especially recommended it for liver inflammation. He says it shrinks the liver. Bugle is a sedative. This is a member of the mint family that is not only a good digestive bitter, that not only helps the liver, but is incredibly calming and relaxing. And it is bitter, but it's not overly bitter. I like the taste of the plant. I could easily grab a stalk of bugle when it's in flower. You look at the flower and you know it's in the mint family. It doesn't smell minty at all, though. The leaves are a little tough, but you can usually just pull them off the stalk, toss them in your salad, and it will relax your muscles. It will lower your heart rate. It will reduce blood pressure. And it's actually fairly pleasant. I mean, it gives that bitter, almost like a, radicchio, if you or a bitter, any other bitter salad green, chicory. I like that flavor. And that's one a lot of people consider a weed for no apparent reason because it's a very pretty late spring plant. It's a very pretty ground cover with purplish, bluish, green leaves. And yeah, it's a useful member of the mint family. Let's see what Elpel said about it. He says bugleweed is edible but tough and bitter. Well, I didn't find it overly bitter or overly tough. Medicinally, bugleweed is mildly astringent, useful internally or externally to stop bleeding. That's right, it's a wound herb. It was used quite commonly among the old British herbalists to heal wounds. It's one that a soldier who was carrying a sword might keep nearby in case he got cut with a sword. It contains some bitters and is mildly astringent and is a useful expectorant. It also helps bring up the mucus from the lungs. Bugleweed is often used for its mild, antispasmodic, nervine, and sedative properties, much like the hops vine of the hemp family. And I will second that. Bugle is very much like hops. I really do like that herb. It may surprise you that another of our most relaxing antispasmodic herbs that I talk about a lot is also in the mint family. It's skullcap, Scutellaria. Skullcap contains a flavonoid called scutellarin, which is antispasmodic, nervine, and sedative, used especially in cases of acute or chronic nervous tension or anxiety. It also acts as a vasodilator to reduce high blood pressure and to increase menstruation. So, here are two plants that we think of as herbs in their own right. We would never think, oh, that's a mint. But yeah, they're in the mint family. And if you look very closely at the characteristics of those plants, you will see, I mean, the bugle flower looks just like a mint flower. The skullcap flower is a little differently shaped, but look at the leaves. Let's see. Ground ivy is one that was brought here from Europe. Ground ivy's a very useful herb. It contains tannins, bitters, and volatile oils. The herb has been used for respiratory ailments, including bronchitis, pneumonia, and cough. One you probably have been battling in your lawn if you choose to grow grass is the dead nettle. People have some odd dislike for purple dead nettle, or it comes in a couple different colors. I usually see purple in my lawn, and I like it because it's a useful, edible, and medicinal herb. For some reason, people think they need to grow grass and get rid of their valuable dandelions and dead nettle and yarrow and everything else that's growing there. But yeah, I mean, I think dead nettle is just absolutely wonderful. It's also called henbit. Henbit contains tannin, mucilage, and many flavonoids. It's used as a mild astringent and expectorant, and the whole plant is edible. Well, let's discuss a little bit about pennyroyal. I told you that one can be very dangerous. Don't touch it if you're pregnant. Pennyroyal is a diaphoretic, antispasmodic, and a bitter. It's a bitter mint. And unlike the bugle, pennyroyal really does have the more of the typical characteristics of mint. It's not just a flower, it also has a smell that would identify it to your nose as part of the mint family. But it's a bitter mint. It is used as a tea to stimulate a sweat or stimulate digestion. The tea is also a menstrual stimulant and vasodilator and can be used to stimulate contractions in an overdue pregnancy, according to Michael Moore. Now, again, I'm not recommending that. Michael Moore worked with a lot of midwives, and that was one of the go-tos for the midwives. I'm not a midwife. I don't think you should touch pennyroyal if you're pregnant, but if you're being treated by a very experienced midwife, and the very experienced midwife says, in this instance, this is what's recommended, well, then that's a different situation than anything I'm just going to sit here and tell you hypothetically in a podcast. He goes on and says at least one person has died from ingesting distilled pennyroyal oil intended to cause an abortion. So, not only can it cause an abortion, it can kill you if you try to use it for that purpose. Don't do that, okay? But it is also a nervine and a carminative. It helps with digestion. Now, hyssop is one also introduced from Europe. Hyssop officinalis is carminative, tonic, expectorant, a vasodilator, and anthelmintic. Also reported as astringent and emmenagogue, used for nose and throat infections. Hyssop is a very commonly used herb. It's one our ancestors brought over here to use as medicine, and it's probably growing wild somewhere near you. I guess I should say feral, because it got out of somebody's garden. And one of the absolutely most useful family is motherwort. Now, again, you might look at motherwort and think, wow, is that really a mint? Yeah, look a little closer. It is. It's antispasmodic, nervine, anthelmintic, laxative, and emmenagogue. It's also an astringent. The plant contains bitters, tannins, volatile oils. Motherwort is used to slow and strengthen the heartbeat while lowering blood pressure. It is also used as a uterine tonic and antispasmodic, hence the common name. Horehound. Now, this is one you may have heard of. Horehound is an extremely bitter member of the mint family. Again, I like bitter flavors, so it's one I like. You may have heard your grandparents or great grandparents talking about horehound candy. Well, a horehound is a member of the mint family. is one of the very best things for a cough. And if you find old-fashioned horehound candy now, it's probably going to be artificially flavored, unless you go to a real specialty shop or an herbalist who makes their own cough drops. But you can make your own cough drops and lozenges, and if you do, well, throw some horehound in there because it's going to be the thing you start turning to first when you have a cold or a cough. Horehound is a native of Europe. It's now widely spread on this continent. The plant is aromatic and extremely bitter, and therefore useful as a digestive aid or a cough suppressant and expectorant. So those old cough sweets, as they call them, lozenges, they took the horehound, an extraction of it, and combined it with some sugar, and to, kind of counteract the bitterness of the plant somewhat. And you'd suck on that until your cough went away. And the old folks used to swear by it. And it's a shame we can't still find the real thing in many stores because, I mean, it's just a very effective cough drop. It fell out of fashion when people's taste changed to where they want things sweet and no bitterness. I mean, my great grandparents' go-to home remedy was what we called pot liquor. It was the broth left over, I guess you would call it a broth, from cooking collard greens or mustard greens or turnip greens. My great grandfather, that was his medicine. He would grab some pot liquor and drink it. But over the years, people just kind of developed a taste more for sweets, probably because of all the corn syrup we're ingesting, all the sweet sodas, and the bitters fell out of fashion, and diabetes went through the roof, and heart disease went through the roof. We need those bitters, and horehound's a good bitter. It's a good herb to use. It's a good one to grow in your garden. And let's see, the herb is often added to cough syrups. Horehound candy is much easier to consume than the bitter herb in a tea, but excessive use may lead to hypertension, according to Michael Moore. Horehound also contains a tannic acid. This is one that really is interesting, a point in Elpel's book. The mints we'd be familiar with, spearmint, peppermint. I don't think apple mint or some of the other wild mints would be really strong enough in the volatile oils, the minty flavor for this use, but certainly water mint would. He recommends picking mint leaves and chewing them if you're drinking fresh water out of a stream, fresh, unfiltered, treated, non-treated water, water that could contain bacteria and other little critters that can make you sick. He says the volatile oil from chewing the mint leaves kills those pathogens. Again, I'm not going to recommend that, but hey, this man lives he practices what he preaches. He goes out in the woods and does primitive skills classes a lot, and this is something he swears by. So if I was in the woods and I didn't have a filter and I hadn't brought any water with me and I had to drink straight out of a creek, yeah, if there's some mint nearby, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to take his advice on that, and that could be advice that could potentially save your life. So tuck that one away somewhere in your memory. Monarda is, we call it bee balm or bergamot. It grows so plentifully in the mountains where I live, and it's one of my absolute favorite plants. This is one where the flowers, the typical mint flowers, are actually large enough that you can get down there with the naked eye and see all the different plants. Monarda is diaphoretic, refrigerant. That means it cools the body. So is peppermint, so spearmint. While it may warm the mouth a little bit, it gives a cooling feeling to the body. Carminative, anthelmintic, mildly sedative, and diuretic. A poultice can be used for headaches. Cool tea is used as a metagogue. At least some species contain thymol, an antiseptic compound used in commercial mouthwashes. Like if you had Listerine or something, you look at the back and the ingredients, you're going to see thymol listed. So that would be another one that you could use to potentially kill some pathogens that may be in your mouth. Native Americans used it as a tea for mouth and throat infections. Oil of bergamot is reported to have a calming effect on birds if rubbed on the bill near the nostrils. So, if you have excitable birds, you may want to grow some bergamot. I recently was talking with a friend who's taken up raising peacocks, and I don't know if y'all have ever been around peacocks. They scream like a woman screaming help. It's help, help at the top of her lungs screaming. They do it in the daytime. They have a tendency to do it all night and can drive you absolutely crazy. So maybe I will recommend some bergamot to my friend. Okay. Coyote mint is called Monardella, and it can be used identically to the way you would use pennyroyal. Enough said on that. Now, here's one you may not think of as being mint, but it certainly is catnip, and its closely related cousin, cat mint. Catnip. The young leaves and buds may be added to a salad. Additionally, catnip contains volatile oils with mildly antispasmodic, nervine, and sedative properties. Catnip is a little bit in its properties like chamomile, a nice relaxing tea. It makes wonderful and mildly relaxing tea. Catnip is also carminative, useful to expel gas or aid in indigestion. It is effective emmenagogue, and of course, cats go crazy over it. According to Mr. Elpelhill here, it smells to them similar to the secretions that cats express from their anal glands. So that explains why they're attracted to it, because that's one of the ways they leave their scent and mark their territory and communicate with each other through their olfactory systems. Doesn't explain why it kind of drugs them out. Cats do love it. If you're growing it and you have a cat around, they're going to be in it. Prunella, which is self-heal, very popular herb, also in the mint family. It's an edible as a salad green or pot herb. Medicinally, it's carminative, anthelmintic, diuretic, antispasmodic, astringent, and mildly bitter. Yeah. Now we get into culinary sage. These are the true sages. They have wonderful, so many wonderful properties, and I've talked about them at length. In fact, I mentioned the rosemary, I mentioned the basil. I'll put the sage under this category, and the other culinary spices I mentioned. I did a whole show on kitchen herbs, culinary herbs for medicinal purposes for Thanksgiving of last year. So if you go back to show number, I'm going to say 6 or 7, you can hear all that, and I went into great detail. No reason to take up your time on that again because you can easily review that at your leisure. But one of the salvias that doesn't really have a lot of smell, and you may think, why is it even called a sage? Well, it is. It's chia. It makes those little seeds. Chia seeds are edible. They're high in protein, and you can see this if you ever wet some. They're very mucilaginous. They get like a mucus-like coating, so it's really good for digestion. According to legend, natives used to march all day on one spoonful of chia seeds, build empires. If you want to lose weight, it's a wonderful diet food. Or you can cook with it, you can put in breads. Makes a wonderful pudding, by the way. But as a diet food, a spoonful of chia seeds, take it with a glass of water or some kombucha or something first thing in the morning, it's going to fill your stomach and give you energy for hours and keep your blood sugar stable. Makes dieting easy. I've talked with several people who've used that as a strategy to help them lose weight. Good emergency food. Good thing to grow if you're worried about food shortages for any reason in the future, whether you lose your job or economic or political or disruption or a natural disaster. Chia seeds are a good thing to keep on hand. They can be cooked into muffins or made into a pudding or just used to stretch out the food supply. Now, sagebrush is not a salvia at all. It's actually in an aster family. It's nothing like culinary sage. And let's see, how about stackies, hedge nettle, betony, also in the mint family. The roots of some species are starchy and edible. The seeds are edible, poached or roasted or ground into meal. Stackies contains up to 15% tannic acid and is useful for diarrhea and irritations of the mucous membrane. And I think that about covers the mints for this week. And like I said, this is a great place to start your foraging and your wildcraft. Again, the book I'm referencing is Botany in a Day by Thomas J. Elpel. You can find all the information you need on mints in any good field guide or pretty much any decent website on foraging or wildcrafting. And this is one, I just encourage you to get out there and do it. Get started. Be amazed what you'll find. You're going to find mints. You're going to find all kinds of other plants where you're looking for mints. And, this is one of those hobbies, I guess you would say, plant identification. It's not only going to give you the freshest, best quality herbs, but it could save your life if you were lost in the woods and needed food. You're not going to find a lot of these growing in the woods, like water mint and such. You might find around creeks. A lot of the mints. Peppermint likes a wet environment. Well, actually, a lot of the mints do like wet feed. But the edges of woods, going into a pasture or a clearing for where the sun can hit the ground, and yeah, you're probably going to find some members of the mint family. It's going to be fun. This is one I encourage you if you have kids to get them involved. Start teaching them about finding wild foods and medicines because the way I got started. So apparently the way Thomas Elpel got started, he tells the same story about learning to identify mint when he was a kid. Kids love the taste of mint. It's really cool, because we get mint flavors in candies and gums, and we're used to the flavor of mint flavored toothpaste. It's one that we can identify by taste or smell, and all you're doing is connecting the dots and learning to identify it by sight. Y'all have a great week, and I will see you next week. The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.